Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this very nice attendance. So we are here to discuss about a great subject, and we'll try to have a lot of information for these 45 minutes coming up. Scale-up mission, bringing reuse and refill projects to the next level. Introducing Manon, who is engineer in supply chain and consultant since 2017.
Hi everyone, I'm Manon Besson. I'm manager at Reset and program coordinator of European project REPAC. So at Reset is a consulting firm dedicated to environmental and economic transition. And REPAC is a coalition that brings together industrials, retailers, and experts towards one goal, that is reducing single-use plastic of food packaging. For that, we work on two main levels, substituting plastic with fiber and implementing reuse, hopefully at scale.
Thank you. Marie-Alix Bertet, who has a PhD in process engineering. I'll let you introduce yourself.
And yeah, thank you. So I'm also working on our European research project, which is BuddyPack, and actually a sister project of REPAC. I work for the Technical Center for Plastics and Composites, and BuddyPack also works on reusable packaging for food packaging and also detergents. And we have large-scale demonstrations, but if you want to know more, the project itself, we do have a booth here, G3, G4, and I'd be happy to answer in more details.
Thank you. Catherine, Catherine Conway, founder of the first modern zero-waste store in 2006.
Hi, nice to be here. So we're from Go Unpackaged. We are a consultancy that helps businesses transition from single-use to reuse, and we are exhibiting on stand G1, the Refill Coalition, which is a standardized solution for refill in store. So we have a reusable standardized vessel that can be used by any supplier, any retailer, and the idea is to create a pool to go around the system to make refill in store a lot more economically viable than it currently is.
And Danny Tucker, founder of Vessel and co-founder of Perpetual. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Such a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. Dagny Tucker. I'm a co-founder of Perpetual. Perpetual is a nonprofit organization that's facilitating full-scale implementation of foodware in 4 U.S. cities and with several UNEP projects in other countries. So I founded a reusable service system back in 2014, operated it for nearly a decade. My co-founder and I found that there was a huge gap in the space in which it was really difficult for individual businesses to incrementally grow reuse. It requires a lot of coordination, and without scale, you really fail to get the behavior change, you fail to get the financial wins or the environmental wins. And so we founded a nonprofit to facilitate all the organizations coming together, government, nonprofits, businesses, do a lot of participatory design in those communities, then design a reusable system for the entire community that's looking at interoperability for multiple service providers, put out RFPs for those providers to come in and operate those systems, and then hold everyone's hand through implementation and monitoring ongoing way. So we are here also. Feel free to come speak to us.
Thank you. So we do reuse every day at home with our dishes, with our clothes, with our cookware. We do have a washing machine, we do have dishwasher at home, so we do really reuse every day. So how can we succeed to do reuse every day on the consumer good products? How can we do reuse outside of our home? How can we scale up that? That's what we want to answer today. There are a lot of trials, actually, on the reuse in stores or in events, etc. Can we define what is scale-up? Because if we want to reply to that question, we need to understand what is scale-up in reuse. Manon, maybe you can have a say.
Thank you. You're totally right. We are seeing a lot of experimentation, trials, coming into the market, and Repack and BuddyPack will be one of those, but nothing is at scale for now. So what would look like scale-up reuse market? I think there is two main point of view. First is the consumer point of view. I think reuse would be at scale when it will become a new normal gesture for consumer, like rooted into his daily life. When consumer will find reuse offer everywhere, it will be simple, and you can bring back your container everywhere. You don't even have to think about it. So I think it's the first main point. And the other one is from an industrial point of view. It also has to become something normal to produce, to be producing like reusable products into reusable packaging, to be as normal as producing single-use packaging.
And that's come to the producer. Today, advocates of reuse often cite cost saving on reduced packaging as key advantage of reuse, but is it universally true for consumer goods? Specifically, do we have cost saving on reuse today, and is there data to back it up? Catherine, maybe?
I think the answer is probably it depends, and I think that's what we need to think about when we're designing. So obviously any new system, especially when you're coming into a single-use system that's very heavily subsidized and has been very optimized over the last 50 years, you know, anything that we come into it is going to be more expensive at the start, but you've got to design for the scaled up state, and at that point, can it be cost effective? And I think certainly what we've learned with the Refill Coalition is it depends sort of what the product is, what the use case is, but in certain cases, it is more efficient to move products around in bulk than it is in single use. So just an example, if you think of 12 bottles in a cardboard box or with a neck on them, then there's about 20% air in every cardboard box. If you cube that out with a bulk container, then you could reduce that 20% or put 20% more product. So that means less lorries on the road, more product per pallet, less CO2 and cost savings. So where we're trying to get to with building the business case, I think traditionally with reuse, the argument has always been sustainability, the customers want it, and we know they want a solution to the problem of plastic. We don't know if they quite are saying we want reuse, but that's okay. And in terms of the commercial argument, it's always been customer loyalty, protect your supply chain against material shocks in difficult, circumstances, things like that. Actually, I think the argument we need to create is if we design things better, on your end-to-end supply chain costs, you can save money. Now, you might spend more money on reverse logistics, washing, that's a possibility, but if we can actually find there's a certain group of product categories and SKUs that it makes absolute sense to do it. Because also, if you think about those bottles with personal care, that packaging is actually quite expensive, the personal care single-use packaging. So it's about finding that economic headroom to design new systems into, and then you can bring it in cost effectively.
And maybe not all the products can be cost effective because some products... I see. Thank you very much. Sure.
And sorry, and just to complete, as you said, it's very much dependent on the application itself. And at BuddyPack, we do have economic sustainability is one of the aspects of the project. Actually, the full name of the project begins with business-driven strategies. And one of our partners is Serious Business, and they do conduct cost-benefit analysis on the use cases of the project, which are as various as business-to-business food in catering, collective catering, or business to consumer detergent sold in supermarkets. And we all hope to bring a knowledge available to everyone who would try to develop the same applications. And we do want to provide alternative business models or value chains on the table, and it will be public by the end of the project.
Sure.
Can I just add another point? Is we also have to remember that the negative externalities and the costs of single-use packaging are not baked into the commercial model. So often we're trying to make a circular, very sustainable system if it was run at scale and run well. stack up against an inherently unsustainable single-use system because there is a huge end-of-life cost in terms of money, pollution, waste, human health, exporting, all of the things that we do that just isn't baked into the cost. So it's a very unlevel playing field, then we have to keep that in mind.
And that brings us to the change management required in bringing reuse to scale, because everybody is so on risk prevention, from the stakeholder to the consumer to the quality department. Nobody wants to take an extra risk, and single-use items are so easy to help manage risk prevention. So how can we do bring trust to the reuse systems, really?
Yeah, actually, that's where the Europe make the choice of fund some research about it. So again, I'm talking from the research point of view, really here to provide answers to the questions that could arise. In terms of safety, we're talking about the safety of the packaging itself, for example. It's something that is tackled, and again, we want to provide answers to everyone. And also regarding the risk regarding consumer acceptance. Social studies are very much expected, and it's also something we carry out to be able to assess the barrier, the opportunity, and find the best way to promote reuse and have consumers on board. So it's, the research is here to provide answers to the industrials for risk they cannot afford to take.
Exactly. And Manon, you work a lot with large brands on your coalition. How do you feel the stakeholder and those companies are aligned with that?
I would say that they are aligned mostly because they don't have the choice. Firstly, there are laws that oblige them to put reuse as objectives for them. But also because everyone knows that resources are not infinite, and we have to preserve them, and raw material will become a real challenge in the coming few years. So yes, we won't escape it, but I think there's also a thing about convincing the shareholders and the one who invest into those big companies, because the thing with transition is that it takes time. You said it, like we need time to build those new models to reach the efficiency, the operational efficiency. So for that, we need to have a medium to long-term vision. But most of the time, the shareholders, they are just looking at the short-term financial result. So it will take time and maybe courage from the executive management to convince the boards, to bring them on board and see, wait a bit, we will come to this profitability, but we have to see long-term and not only short-term. So I think we need this medium, long-term vision to bring reuse at scale.
Yeah, thank you. Stakeholders really need patience and investment.
I think on a sort of a detailed risk, like the risks are manageable. So, there's a lot of standardization work, the PR3 work. There is lots of standards of how we can do things, right? We know how to wash things, we know how to wash them safely, we don't kill people in hospitals and restaurants every day. We know how to do all of this stuff. So we had to work out some new cleaning processes for the Refill Coalition, and our corporate partners just worked through them, and some of them worked, some of them didn't, some took a little bit longer, but the individual risks themselves are not insurmountable, and I often think that that's a very easy excuse for business to not change, when in actual fact, your point is right. It's the kind of perception of corporate risk, and then also the consumer perception as well, which is very important and can't be underestimated. But in terms of like the risk that we're somehow going to suddenly start harming people with all of this reusable packaging, I think every company here can tell you that that's just not a real risk.
Yeah, exactly. So reuse systems are more complex than single-use. We can agree on that, especially single-use linear systems. Foodware industry come with some great new approach to tackle that complexity. Dani, do you have some say about that?
Yeah, in terms of scaling, I think everyone's hit on really great points here. We have done a lot of experiments, a lot of pilots. We understand what's happening. We understand how things work. We understand what's safe, what's not safe. At Perpetual, we call a pilot a 4-letter word at this point, because the reality is the reuse industry knows how to do its job, but it hasn't had an opportunity to demonstrate scale. And we think many of the questions that are still up, much of the research that's coming out of the hard work by BuddyPack and others, suggests that we can make this economical, we can make it better environmentally, we know at scale all of these things happen. In terms of the behavior change, our premise really exists around this. We don't think we need to focus on the behavior change if you are creating similar infrastructure to what we have been subsidizing for single use. So in our 4 cities, we look at having, these are cities of 50 to 150,000 people. 90% of businesses will participate. No legislation's in place. They're volunteering to participate. There will be a similar price point, and there'll be hundreds of return receptacles around these. It's sort of the 200-meter rule. So you will be in an immersive reuse experience. This is something we just haven't had an opportunity to see yet. And so we have no real idea beyond our research and the theoretical what this looks like. I believe, based on what we're finding already, that we're going to see that pilot should remain a 4-letter word, and that these systems, if designed properly, will be successful economically, environmentally, improved socially, and they will be systems that live on into the long future.
No, that's a great point, and definitely we need the help of the legislative agenda to make sure we are aligned with this subsidized system of single-use recycling. So can reuse scale without legislation support and reuse targets, or no?
I think we're going to have to. Oh, hello? We've missed the opportunity with the PPWR in the sense that there are some good targets in there for transit packaging, for takeaway packaging. But if you think of the majority of FMCG goods in a consumer's basket when they go shopping, most of those are not covered by PPWR regulation. I don't think we're holding out much hope for the Global Treaty in terms of direct targets. But I'll just give you an example of when legislation isn't helping. So PPWR has changed the wording of the floor space that needs to be dedicated to reuse. And whether you think that's a blunt instrument or not, and it might be, it was something fixed. And they changed it from must to shall endeavour to. And we sat in a meeting with a European retail chain, and they said, we're not even looking at it anymore because there's no longer an obligation. So that's what happens when you don't have legislation. So yes, I personally think there should be targets. I think they should be for specific product categories. I think they can have a good transition period if that's what's required. But I am no longer convinced that we are going to get that in any way, because I feel like we've missed the opportunity. And so it's how do we get business to do this when they're not being forced to do it?
Yeah, and when we face competition with single use, the single-use trash system it's literally a truck coming to your door every week, collecting from your bin, going to centralized sorting system. All that subsidized by your taxes when it's not covered completely by the EPR system. So it's a daily subsidized field, our competition, single-use. I would say, should we be hesitant to add more help from government, from taxes, from more subsidies on the operation cost? Dani?
Yeah, I think we're starting to recognize that we're not comparing apples to apples here. We know that single use is being subsidized. Will that be a direct one-to-one return? We don't know, but I think it's completely plausible that we should start thinking about the resources that we're providing as taxpayers, as governments, and in other iterations, and where that money will really be the best spent. In one of our cities, we actually have the waste management company that wants to be the reuse provider. So they're looking at doing, co-collection, building the washing facility. I think that there has been a little bit of a pushback from some recycling or waste management, or the city seeing this as outside. Governments are really just trying to understand, where does reuse fit in what a government provides? Do they govern it? Does somebody else? And I think there's going to be opportunities for all of those players to see real value in how reuse can both minimize sort of the outputs they're having to put forward for single use, but also create all of these other co-benefits as well. Increased jobs, better health, cleaner streets, etc. So I think absolutely this comparison, a real understanding of what those costs are and how we can gain should absolutely be part of the conversation.
Yeah, it seems we always ask reuse to be economically competitive by itself, internaling all the costs. And you could see in some coalition you have so many add costs to the value. You want to?
Yeah, right. At the beginning, everyone knows that reuse will be more expensive. You have a full loop. We have to close the loop and add so many steps like collecting, washing, and someone has to pay for it. So, yeah, I think finding resources to impulse reuse at the beginning, and I don't know for how long, but it will be really important to help industrial and retailers to create the dynamic and help them to with those costs at the beginning.
And finally, also there is something I really want we talk about. It's consumer needs. Consumer goods really know how to attract consumer, understand their needs, make them want to buy your product, and that's how mass production has increased with single use. They could use so much marketing to attract the consumer, but they also understand the needs. So how can we have the consumer adoption on the reuse? What are the key success to have a good, successful product launch?
So to the consumer, more? Okay. Yeah, to the consumer on board. So as I said, we do have social study tackling this issue. It's also, I mean, the studies are on. So I cannot provide definite answers, but I know it has to do with easy access, easy handling for the consumer themselves, easy tools for them to deal and bring back the containers. And it has to do with the right communication toward them. And something we want to tackle during the Body Pack project is really to find the right tools to promote reuse, to reach the consumer the right way. Yeah, to make it easy and widely used. It should be normal to reuse.
I think to back up what you were saying is I think we sometimes confuse a lack of consumer demand with a lack of consumer availability. So unless you are, well, certainly in the UK, we've only ever had reusable milk bottles or reusable pop bottles about 40 years ago. So unless you are a certain type of person from a certain culture, you don't have an experience of reuse. So there's a huge problem to start off with, and you can't be what you can't see. So we actually need to get it more out there. I think we have to think about it when, consumers are used to choice. In a household, you might have 4 people using 4 different shampoos. So there's no point just saying to them, you only get one shampoo and it all comes in the same bottle. So when you're in the shower, you don't know whose shampoo is whose. Otherwise, that's never going to work. So I think there are ways, as you say, of using everything we know about marketing now. FMCG companies are really good at selling us things we don't need. So they could very easily sell us things that we do need. And then also, the elephant in the room is just getting rid of the single-use choice, right? So some of the bans that are coming in on takeaway and dine-in, I personally believe that any closed-loop environment, stadium, event, festival, schools, hospital, anywhere where you're not leaving, you shouldn't be able to have single-use because it just makes no sense. So I think there's lots of levers that we can pull while still remembering that consumers we have created a lot of needs that we can't ignore now.
I can add a little bit. I think that this is an interesting point, the shampoo. I love this. And I think that, we're hitting this fine line between what's it going to look like from standardized packaging to what are the efficiencies you gain with standardized packaging, CPG, foodware as well. You have so many different food types. But I think, to everyone's point, we're great at labeling. We've made huge strides in wash-off labels as well. And I think that there's this idea that suddenly standardized packaging is going to take away a marketing opportunity. But if anyone's bought a can of any vegetable, you probably noticed they're all in exactly the same can or jar of tomato sauce, same jars. So standardized packaging isn't a new thing, and I don't think it's something we suddenly need to freak out about because we're going to lose some marketing opportunity. That's simply not the case. So I think we can still offer that variety and that choice and meet that fine line between what's required from a standards perspective and what's required from a marketing perspective.
Do you want to add something, Manon?
Totally agree on standard packaging, and it will create new habits for consumers, but also simplify the supply chain, because massification and standardization will help to have way bigger flows and mutualize washing and transportation. So yeah, we have to go to this standardization road.
And so how can we face the wish of the producer to have exactly the same technical aspect of their single-use packaging to the reuse? It's like sometimes they want to translate, my product is in single-use and I want the same in reuse, but without the default of the single-use. How do we have to convince them to just change the product or stop some product? Or do we have to comply to their needs?
I think we can do the research, right? Very much about the research, but it's true that we do have a lot of knowledge regarding specifications, how to design new packagings. But the key about standardization is to know the right amount of specific cases we have to consider. So there are a lot of different needs for different products, but some of them can be common, and then you can add standardization. And that's it. I think it's about having the right amount of categories for standardizing the packaging. And it's about specifications.
Categories, in fact.
I'll just say that, I don't know how many of you were here 6 years ago or even last year, but I think we've seen, obviously, just exponential growth in the reuse space. And the innovation that's come along with that has been picking up pace exponentially as well. And so I think, Gerard, you're right. I think hot fries are hard to vent. I mean, there's lots of complications in foodware. And I don't know, we're not 100% there yet. That's the truth. But I think that the innovation in packaging is going to rapidly move forward and catch up to this space. You see, Safia from Cup Clubs in the audience, she's created a lot of packaging specifically for reuse. Many of the other companies here have as well, and I think that's going to continue to progress to meet the needs that are out there. And I think that's true with the return infrastructure as well. We're all been familiar with bottle returns, but now we're seeing return for foodware, return for all kinds of items, packaging, how we're thinking about that. So, buckle your seatbelt if you're just getting into this space, because it's moving really quickly. So I think we're going to meet those needs. And if we're then also co-collecting at somebody's house, like we're collecting people's waste right now, which is what's going to happen in one of our 4 cities in the US, I think you hit a level of normalization where this space has the room to grow. It will bring confidence to the investors. It will then pull those companies along who are going to really not look great if they don't have reusable products in the space, regardless of legislation.
I think one way of trying to solve this is working in coalitions. So if you can get sector specialists, whether it's brands that all work or to particular product types. So when we were designing the Refill Coalition, we had to think of a vessel that could work for fillers, because we tried to design something that could ultimately go down an automatic packing line. We had to make it okay for being in the supply chain. So my colleague did a lot of analysis about how to cube loads out to make it super efficient, both for pallets and roll cages. We then had to have, how do you think about the in-store colleagues? Suddenly someone goes, oh yeah, we'll just have a 50 kilo thing. I thought, well, how's anyone going to lift 50 kilos? And then what does it look like for the consumer end? And I think if you can run those coalitions well, you can find out what are the absolute non-negotiables for each part of the chain and try and meet every single one of those. And then where the compromise compromises can be had. And actually, if you get things that are only designed by marketeers or only designed by in-store merchandising teams, you'll forget about all of this other stuff in the supply chain. So I think hopefully where we're going to move to is these individual trials to actually like big cross-sector collaborations where people can design standardized packaging together, get enough of their needs met, and understand where they need to compromise.
Totally. Single-use packaging is very easy for the consumer on the recycling part because they just dump it in their bin and it's getting then collected and sent to a sorted center. How reuse can scale with that easiness on the single-use side? Should we constrain more the single-use by imposing a DRS system for the packaging?
I mean, I think that this is a geographic question. It's one that's coming up clearly in INC as well. You know, DRS systems are really prominent in Europe. They're not so prominent in other parts of the world. The number of DRS systems that exist, you know, I don't know the total number off the top of my head, but I think a DRS-like system, you know, a model might be slightly different depending on the geography. I think that at the end of the day, we're going to have to create infrastructure that's pretty similar to what's happening for reuse. People have on-the-go lifestyles, they're on the move. I think that the reality to continue meeting the needs of consumers is going to require pretty significant infrastructure. And I think that means governments are waking up to, like, what does that mean? Centralized washing facilities. It's great if you can have a washing facility on site. Many businesses don't have that space. Much of the global south doesn't necessarily have the clean water needed to do that. So I think that the variations of how that might need to be accomplished is going to be different. But I think that even within those variations, we can still see the type of interoperability that we need to have to really make these systems use. I want to pick up something in the UK and get my coffee and get on the Eurostar and drop it off in France. That's what I do with my coffee. I leave with, that's why we like single use. And it's totally plausible given the developments we've already made in asset tracking, in the movement of goods, in partnerships that have been created. So yes, whether it's DRS or it's other combined methodologies, I think something like that is in our near future. And we're seeing, I'll say very quickly, Aarhus is an excellent example. So Tamra, their machine over here, reusable on the side. It's in Aarhus. I don't know, they maybe have 20 of them. I interviewed a ton of the businesses, cafes providing the cup there, secret shopper style. Right? Many of them had provided reusable cups prior to the implementation of street-side return infrastructure. On the best day, they were seeing maybe 10% of their customers adopt a reusable cup. Now they see consistently, at a minimum, anywhere between 40 to 60% adoption. Having infrastructure that's easy for people to access and get to fulfill the type of lives we're leading is going to be a requirement.
I see your point. We may need to increase the constraint on the single use, but we need to greatly reduce the constraints on the reuse, obviously.
No, it's to me, it's also. Sorry.
Okay.
It's also about, so for now we kind of in this hot topic for reuse, and it's a lot of solutions are being developed and tested, and to me I see it as a toolbox from which the best tools will emerge and be developed and spread as needed. But I do like to see the diversity of the tools we have at our disposal, and then the key will be to have the right standardization, to have the right interoperability, as you said, even internationally. But I'm very happy to see so many people mobilized on the topic.
And talking about mobilization, do we have some question in the audience on this amazing subject of scale-up?
Thank you very much, everybody. Michael from CHEP. Just Marie-Alix, to the question you were just raising just now. Hold it, watch closer, yeah, okay. Do you think that the different solutions all need to mature to a point where people can say, okay, I will choose this one because I've tried all the options? Or do you think some of them can be scaled up while the others are still waiting and they're still in pilot stage?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I heard you well. So you're asking, so we have if there are a lot of different solutions, you want to know if all need to mature or if we can. I think, again, that's the point of research project like the one that like BuddyPack, and that we're not really, the large-scale demonstration I was talking about, it's about 1,000 to 3,000 units of packaging being tested on sites. So it's a small scale, actually, for an industry. It's kind of the pilot, the intermediate, which might not be mature, but we might learn enough lesson to then give a go, no-go for the best solutions to go to the next steps. I don't know if I answer your question. It helps to sort, to maybe assess which are the most promising and which are the most scalable afterwards.
Yeah, I think your comment about having different tools in the toolbox, people will feel much more comfortable to say, okay, I want to choose this one for this job, when they really feel they understand what the other options could look like. So I think there's a dependency on a variety of those tools all coming to a level of maturity.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that there's going to have to be variety. Like, let's talk about packaging. Some people want plastic, some people will never touch plastic, some people will do, they all have value in different iterations. I think that the maturity question is one that's so complicated, right? Is somebody competitively going to get mature before somebody else? Do they have the opportunity? Do we need to see the maturity? I mean, I think the market's going to just have its say in what gains maturity. I think the opportunities also are a question. I think there are, a dozen, probably every reuse service provider here is just dying for that opportunity to scale. Do they have the support to do that? We're doing something unique in Perpetual Cities. We've designed the entire operational system to be modular. So the RFP went out for each component of the system. So somebody has to do the back-end technology that's tracking all the assets. Somebody has a interface with the user, so sort of the front-end checkout technology. Somebody might do the logistics, right? Who provides the return infrastructure? Now, it complicates it, but we wanted an opportunity to choose what we felt like was the best in class for each of those, so we could see what happened when consumers had what we thought would be the best experience in all those iterations. Is that an opportunity for each of those various companies to mature and have scale? We hope so. We hope we're providing those opportunities. But I don't know that we get to decide whether the market gets to be mature across the board or just some people do.
I think what you're saying about modularity is really at the heart of this. I've been in the startup world for a long time. We know the failure rate of startups because, as you say, there's so many other factors. It's not just, have you got a good technological solution? Have you got a good management team? Have you got funding? All of those kind of things. And I think it is difficult to get to scale if one startup thinks that they're going to win the whole market, right? Is one in-store refill solution going to win every FMCG brand and every retailer across a global marketplace? No. So therefore, how do you design it? Well, as you say, you design the modules of the system, you design the bits that need to be interoperable, and then you let the market decide as it goes through. So this is brilliant, and there will be a rationalization of the amount of competing companies that can do this. And also, I'd really encourage people to join forces. We all think we can do this by ourselves, but suddenly having half of a much bigger pie is better than having the whole of a very small pie. So actually, it's like, what are you good? What's your capabilities in your particular bit? And who has a complementary capability that you might be able to partner with? And trying to use that kind of abundance mentality rather than the scarcity mentality, I think will really help this growing new sector. But it's a new sector. Everyone's got to find their way. The activist in me would love this to be at 100% by 2025, but it takes longer than that, right?
Thank you.
Hi. one of the things which I see is... Can you hear me? My fault. For smaller brands working in FMCG with major retailers, I see a risk with reuse and refill that is going to be dominated by the major brands. How do we make sure that small brands can also become, be reusable, have refill type packaging, and go on the same journey as major brands?
I guess that's where standardization comes into it. Just at one point, I'm sure there's loads more, but that's where standardization can really help because they can't afford bespoke packaging. But also small brands can move a lot faster. You try working with the massive FMCG brands, it's like turning an oil tanker. So actually you've got a huge differentiator. Often those smaller brands have a very particular customer base as well, who might have, I'm not saying it's just organic, but they might have a better relationship with their customers to take them on that journey. But I think that's one of the real enablers of standardization, that you allow small brands and more localized brands to enter into a bigger system.
And I would add, like you said, I think coalition is the new competition, and especially for small brands, it's easier for small brands to get together and work together and become more powerful. And that's all what we do at Repack. Like we bring together more than 10 brands and medium to small brands to work together on the subject. So yeah, I think coalition is one of the key of scaling up.
I would just, I know the North American market better, and the distributors are the key. Like if you're a small brand and you want to get into CPG, you got to have a distributor, and getting there is a deal. But the great news for reuse and small brands is that a lot of them are already co-packing. They're already using facilities where they're co-packing. So if you're co-packing together and you can have standard packaging, assets, variety, it's already determined, then you're not going to have a problem with the distributor either, because he's already ready or she's already ready to take that type of packaging. So I think those are key components, and I think that those are the ways that you can facilitate small businesses getting in.
We may have a last question, maybe? Thank you very much. We had a great audience and great speakers from high-level research and deep experience. Scale-up is definitely something we'll talk for the next 5 years, 10 years. We need to be patient, and that's, I think, one of the key components I would say here is shareholders need to be patient. They should not run away, because the revenue at the beginning might not be certain as it is in single use, and they need to incentivize executives into their reuse or into their because they are incentivized only on the way the share is going, and they are not incentivized into the environment profitability they are making. Thank you very much.